I want you to picture something. You are sitting in a chair that used to feel safe. The kind of room where family should feel like family. My mother-in-law, Diane, was pouring tea like she had good news to share. I remember the spoon clinking against the cup. That small, ordinary sound. Then she slid a photograph across the table. A little boy, maybe 4 years old. Big brown eyes and a smile that looked too familiar. He was standing beside my husband, Daniel. Daniel had his hand on the boy's shoulder. They both wore matching blue shirts. You deserve to know, Diane said softly. Daniel has responsibilities. He has a son. His name is Marcus. I looked at Daniel. He was sitting right beside me. He did not stand up. He did not deny it. He did not even lower his eyes. He just said, I was going to tell you, Zara. I just needed the right time. The right time. We had been married for 3 years. 3 years of building what I thought was our life. Our savings. Our plans. Our future. I could not speak. Then Daniel's phone buzzed on the table between us. He did not reach for it quickly enough. A small voice came clearly through the speaker. Daddy. My hands went cold. I did not sleep that night. I lay staring at the ceiling while Daniel breathed slowly beside me. My mind kept circling the same question. How long? The next morning I asked him directly. He answered like someone who had rehearsed it. Marcus was 4 years old. The mother's name was Priya. They had been together before me, he said. But it did not end when we started dating. It did not end when he proposed. It did not end on our wedding day. He had been supporting them the entire time. Rent for an apartment 20 minutes from ours. School fees. Medical bills when Marcus got sick. Birthday gifts. He used the word responsibilities. Like I was supposed to nod and understand. Where did the money come from? I asked. He went quiet. I already knew where to look. We had a joint savings account. I put money in every month from my teacher's salary. I had trusted Daniel with the bills. I opened my banking app right there at the table. The withdrawals matched the rent amount exactly. My money had been paying for their apartment. Every single month. For over 2 years. My friend Amara came over within an hour of my call. She sat with me on the couch while I showed her the bank records. She did not say much. She just listened. Then she asked the right question. She asked how Diane had known exactly when to show me that photograph. She asked why Daniel had looked so calm. Too calm. Like a man who knew the conversation was coming. That thought sat inside me like a stone. I went back to Diane's house 2 days later, unannounced. She answered the door without much surprise. She made tea again. I noticed she did that when she wanted to seem kind. She said Priya had needed stability. She said Daniel had tried to leave, but could not abandon his son. She said she had helped them find the apartment. She had recommended the school. She said it all like she was explaining something obvious. I asked what I was in this picture. She smiled slowly. The kind of smile that means someone has thought about this moment for a long time. That boy, she said, is my real grandson. She did not say I was her real daughter-in-law. She did not need to. The way she set down her cup said everything else. Daniel came home that evening with flowers. Yellow ones. My favorite. The speech came out too smooth, like he had written it in the car. He said he loved me. He said Marcus was innocent. He said a father could not abandon his child. He said he had been afraid of losing me. He used the word afraid 3 times. Then he said the part that broke something in me that I do not think ever fully healed. He said he thought we could find a way to make it work. Other families had done it. Maybe we could coexist. Priya was reasonable. Marcus deserved his father present. He was asking me to share my husband. He was asking me to call that love. I sat very still while he talked. I had gotten good at that. Staying still while everything inside me moved at full speed. I asked him one question. If I had found out on my own, were you ever going to tell me? He looked at the flowers. He said nothing. That silence was his answer. And in that silence, I understood something for the first time. This was not a man who had made a single mistake. This was a man who had made the same choice every single morning for 3 years. 5. I met Priya on a Thursday afternoon by accident. I was driving past the address from the bank records when she stepped outside with Marcus. He was carrying a backpack with a dinosaur on it. She was wearing yellow, which felt like a small cruel joke. She saw me immediately. She knew who I was. I could tell by the way her chin went up. I got out of the car before my brain could stop me. We stood on the pavement and looked at each other. She was not embarrassed. She was not ashamed. She looked at me like I was the complication in the story, like I was the subplot that did not fit. She said Daniel had told her about me. She said these things happen sometimes, and the important thing was Marcus. She said she had not wanted to hurt anyone. I asked how long she had known about me. She said she had known from the beginning. I asked if she had ever thought about telling me. She said Daniel had told her it would be sorted out, that I would be fine eventually. Then she added one more sentence. She said he had promised her marriage first. I stood on that pavement and felt the ground shift under everything I had believed. I went home and sat in the dark for an hour. Then I called Amara. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said simply, "Ask her for proof." She was right. I texted Priya that evening. I told her I needed to understand the full picture. I told her I deserved that much. She agreed. I think she was tired of hiding too. We met at a coffee shop that Saturday, while Daniel thought I was at the supermarket. Priya brought her phone. She had kept everything. She was organized and careful, the kind of person who prepares for the moment she might need evidence. She scrolled through her message history with Daniel. Voice notes, plans, photos. She showed me exchanges where he had called her his future, where he had used the word forever, where he had asked her to be patient. She showed me a specific set of messages and pointed to the date. I read it twice. Those messages, where Daniel was promising her a real life together, had been sent during our honeymoon. We had been in Cape Town for 7 days. I had an entire album from that trip. Sunsets, dinners by the ocean, Daniel laughing with his arm around me. While I was taking those photographs, he was typing promises to her. After I saw those messages, something inside me changed. Not anger, though there was plenty of that. Something colder. The feeling that comes when you stop being surprised and start paying attention. I came home and went through everything I could access. We shared a Google Calendar. Daniel had never thought to remove me. I went back 2 years. Then 3. I compared his stated plans against dates I could verify elsewhere. The pattern was not hidden. It was just in plain sight, waiting for someone to look. The weekends Daniel said were work conferences matched school events at Marcus's school, which I found on Priya's public social media. 3 birthday parties, a Christmas play, a sports day in March. The long weekends visiting his uncle matched photos Priya had posted from the same dates, with Daniel in them, tagged at a guest house 3 hours away. 2 homes, 2 sets of important days, 2 separate lives running in perfect parallel. I made a folder on my laptop. Screenshots, dates, labels. Then I went further. Receipts from Daniel's wallet, a florist, a toy shop, a restaurant I had never been to. I had been living beside a man who had built an entirely separate world while sleeping in my bed and eating at my table. The most frightening part was how well he had managed the schedule. Numbers tell the truth even when people do not. I had worked in school administration before teaching. I knew how to follow a paper trail. One Sunday, while Daniel watched football, I went through every account I could access. The joint savings account withdrawals were larger than I had noticed. Regular. Consistent. I had never questioned them because Daniel handled the bills. I also looked at the business account. Daniel ran a small logistics company. I had never examined the books because we had kept business and personal finances separate. Or so I believed. The company credit card had paid Priya's rent 3 times. It had also covered Marcus's school registration, 2 medical bills, a weekend trip I was not part of. That was company money being used for a private arrangement. I wrote everything down. Every amount, every date, every account number. Then I found something that stopped me completely. I had not known about the life insurance policy. Daniel had set one up 2 years into our marriage. He had mentioned it once in passing. I pulled up the details now. The primary beneficiary was not me. The primary beneficiary listed was Marcus Osei. I closed the laptop and sat very still. Then I opened it again and saved everything to a folder named, simply, Evidence. I visited Diane on a Tuesday morning unannounced. I wanted to see her face before she had time to prepare it. She answered the door in her house robe, only slightly surprised. She stepped aside and made tea. Of course. I told her calmly that I had found financial records, calendar entries, and receipts that told a story she had not shared with me. She nodded slowly. She did not look afraid. She looked like someone who had expected this conversation. She said Daniel had always intended to bring both sides together. It had just taken longer than expected. She had hoped I would be understanding once I got to know Marcus. She had been the one to suggest the apartment near us. She had wanted Marcus close to his father. She had helped with the first months of rent. Then she mentioned inheritance. She said Daniel was her only child. Everything she had would go to him and his children. She looked at me steadily when she said children. She was making sure I understood Marcus was already in that picture. She poured more tea. Unhurried.
Calm.
I looked at her hands. Steady. The hands of a woman who believed everything was proceeding as planned. From the way she spoke, I was not sure I was part of the plan at all. Maybe I had never been meant to be. There is a memory I had been carrying for over a year without understanding it until now. Daniel and I had been trying for a baby. Quietly, hopefully. We had talked about names. About whether our apartment was big enough. 8 months into our marriage, I had some tests done. The results were not easy. I had a condition that made pregnancy difficult, though not impossible. My doctor said with treatment the chances were reasonable. I told Daniel that same evening. He held my hand. He said we would figure it out together. 3 weeks later, he suggested we both get checkups at a specialist clinic.
Better equipment, he said.
I went. I gave my history. I signed consent forms without reading every page carefully. I trusted my husband. Now I sat in Diane's kitchen and asked her directly whether Daniel had told Priya about my diagnosis. She looked into her teacup. She said Daniel had been worried. He had wanted to make sure there would be someone who could give him a child if I could not. She said it without flinching. My medical records had been used to make a decision about my future. Without my knowledge. Without my consent. I had shared the most private part of myself with the person I trusted most. He had turned it into a reason to make other arrangements. That night I sat in the bathroom with the door locked and the lights off. Not because I was falling apart. I had moved past falling apart somewhere around the time I found the bank records. I sat in the dark because I needed to think without anyone watching my face. My medical information was private. The most personal kind of private there is. The kind of thing you share with a husband because that is what trust means. He had taken that tender thing and used it as a reason. I thought about Priya. I now understood what I had not understood when we stood on that pavement. She had known about my diagnosis before I had fully processed it myself. She had made her choices with information that was never meant to leave the doctor's office. Everyone in this situation had more information than I did. I had been the only one kept in the dark. I unlocked my phone. I opened my medical app. I checked who had access to my shared health profile. Daniel was still listed. I had added him when we married, the way couples do. I removed him. It was a small action. Barely anything. But it was the first thing I had taken back. And I understood clearly it would not be the last. Daniel's cousin got married in September. 300 guests, a live band, months of planning. I had helped choose the table arrangements. I thought it would be a good day. I should have stayed home. We arrived together. Daniel worked the room the way he always did. He had a gift for making people feel comfortable. I used to love that about him. An hour in, near the dessert table, I saw Diane standing with older family members I did not know well. Marcus was beside her in a small suit. He looked proud of it. She was introducing him. I was close enough to hear. She called him Daniel's son. She called him the first grandchild. An older aunt leaned down and pinched his cheek warmly. Then one of Daniel's uncles saw me and said something I will not forget. He said, "Oh, good, Zara, you've met him finally. We weren't sure how long Daniel was going to keep everyone separate." He laughed as he said it. The kind of laugh people use when something is both funny and terrible. The family around him nodded. Some looked at me with sympathy. Some studied the floor. Every single one of them knew. The whole family had known. I was the only person in that room who had been kept ignorant. And all of them had let it continue. I came home from the wedding and said nothing to Daniel. He tried to explain the evening. I walked past him into the bedroom and closed the door. I did not sleep. At 2 a.m, I went to the small home office we shared. A filing cabinet sat along one wall. We kept documents there. Insurance papers. Lease agreements. Normal things. I had always been allowed to access it. I went through it slowly. Most of it was what I expected. Then near the back of the bottom drawer, behind a folder of old tax returns, I found an envelope. Not sealed. I pulled out the papers inside. It was a draft will. Daniel's name was at the top. The document was dated 4 months ago. I read it carefully once. Then, again. The will left the apartment to Marcus, held in trust until he turned 21. The business assets were to be managed by a trustee for transfer. The joint savings account was listed separately. There was a beneficiary section near the end. I searched it completely. My name was not there. Not once. Not anywhere. I photographed every page before putting it back exactly where I found it. Then I went back to bed and stared at the ceiling until the room grew gray with morning. After Daniel went to work, I called Amara. I told her about the will. She was quiet. Then she said I needed a lawyer. She had a contact. A woman named Saad who handled family and financial matters. I called Saad that afternoon. She asked questions for 40 minutes and listened to everything. The joint account, the company funds, the insurance policy, the will, the medical records. She explained what she saw. The will was still a draft and had not been filed, but it had been prepared recently and deliberately. The language was too precise for Daniel working alone. Someone with legal knowledge had helped write it. She asked who the named executor was. I told her. The executor was Diane Osei. Saad was quiet for a moment. Then she asked if I had signed the financial agreement Daniel had brought me. I told her I had not. She said if I had signed it, it would have seriously weakened my legal standing. Then she explained what the plan appeared to be. The financial agreement would establish my acknowledgement of the second family. The will, once filed, would redirect the assets. Diane, as executor, would manage the process from above. It was a complete structure, built carefully over months, by people who had assumed I would not look closely enough to find it. Daniel brought a revised financial agreement home one evening and set it beside my dinner plate like it was a thoughtful gift. He said a friend had helped draft it. He said it was just for clarity. I read it while he watched me. The agreement proposed splitting our joint savings immediately. 60% to Daniel for what the document called ongoing family obligations. 40% remaining for me. There was a clause about the apartment. If we separated, a portion of its value would go towards securing housing for Marcus and his mother. There was a section asking me to acknowledge in writing that Daniel had prior existing commitments which predated our marriage. He wanted my signature confirming his second family was not a betrayal, that it had always existed, that I was agreeing to step aside and help fund it. I turned the pages slowly. I looked at him. I said I would need time to think about it. He smiled. He took that as progress. As me coming around, I put the document in my bag. I did not tell him Saad had asked me to bring her any new documents immediately. I did not tell him I had photographed the will draft. I did not tell him much of anything anymore. The document would be on Saada's desk by morning. I want to tell you about the week after I put that document in my bag. It was the quietest week of my life, and also the most important. I stopped arguing. I let the house return to its normal rhythms. Meals made. Dishes washed.
Good night said.
Daniel relaxed. I could see it in his shoulders. He believed the worst was behind them. He was wrong. I was documenting. Saad had told me to write everything down. Not just what I had found, but what was still happening. Every unusual expense. Every conversation I remembered clearly. Every date and amount. I kept a small notebook in my school bag and wrote in it during lunch. I dated every entry. I also called my bank separately and moved my direct deposit to my personal account only. The woman on the phone asked no questions. Then I returned to the business accounts. Daniel had given me access 2 years earlier to help with payroll paperwork. He had never removed it. It mattered to me now. I went through the last 18 months line by line. The transfers I found did not look like ordinary expenses. They looked deliberate. They looked like a pattern that had been running quietly for a long time. And they pointed towards something far more serious than what I had already found. Priya's apartment was not rented. Daniel had used that word specifically. Monthly payments. Nothing permanent. I found the truth on a Wednesday evening while going through the company's property records. Daniel's logistics company had purchased a small commercial property 2 years ago.
I had known about that.
What I had not known was that a second property appeared in the company's name, listed in the same suburb where Priya and Marcus lived. I searched the address on the property registration website. The apartment where they lived was registered as an asset of the company. It had been purchased using a business loan. A business loan I had co-signed. Daniel had presented that paperwork as a company investment. He said it would be used for business storage. He pointed to a line and asked me to initial it. I had annealed it without reading the full description. I had helped purchase the home where my husband's other family lived. My signature was on that document. I sat at the kitchen table with that knowledge for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called Saad. She answered on the second ring. When I finished telling her what I had found, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said 2 things. She said, "That is fraudulent misrepresentation." And she said, "That is exactly what we needed." Saad explained it over 2 phone calls and 1 meeting at her office. When a business loan is used to purchase a personal asset for someone outside the business, without declaring it properly, it crosses a legal line. When the co-signatory on that loan is not told the real purpose of the purchase, that is misrepresentation. My signature appeared on financial paperwork connected to this property. That gave me legal standing to ask questions. And if Daniel had misled me about the purpose of that loan, it could be examined formally. Saad also reviewed the draft will carefully. She said the language was too precise for Daniel working alone. Someone with legal training had helped write it. She suspected a lawyer had been involved, possibly arranged through Diane. She explained why the financial agreement Daniel had asked me to sign was central to their plan. Had I signed it, I would have formally acknowledged his prior obligations and limited my ability to challenge how shared assets had been managed. I told her I had not signed it. She said quietly, "I believe they were counting on you too." I thought about the flowers he had brought home that first evening. I thought about how carefully everything had been arranged. The timing, the documents, the conversation at Diane's table. I thought about how close I had come to missing all of it. I had almost let them subtract me completely. Diane made a mistake. I do not think she understood it at the time. Daniel had asked her to handle paperwork connected to the property. She agreed without asking enough questions. She trusted her son completely. He asked her to sign a declaration confirming the company property had been purchased for legitimate business purposes. It was meant to make the company's records look clean and consistent. Diane was listed as a non-executive director of the company. She had agreed to that title years ago as a formality. She had not taken it seriously. She had never attended a single board meeting. She did not read the document carefully. She signed it because Daniel said it was routine. Saad read it and went very still. The declaration, combined with the property registration and the loan records, created a paper trail. Diane had now confirmed in writing something that was provably false. By signing it, she had attached her name to a misrepresentation. She had, without realizing it, become connected to the very plan she had spent months helping to build. I thought about all the tea she had poured. I thought about her calm, steady hands. I thought about the way she had said real grandson and set down her cup. I thought about what it felt like to finally be the person in the room who was actually prepared for what came next. I met Saad at her office on a Friday morning. Her file was thicker than I expected. She had been working. She walked me through everything methodically. Full dissolution of the marriage with complete financial disclosure. The joint savings account, including the portion used for the other household, would need proper accounting. The property created a separate legal issue. Because I had co-signed the loan under misrepresentation, I had standing to challenge how that asset had been used and registered. The draft will, though never filed, was relevant to the overall pattern of what had been planned and by whom. She had spoken to a colleague handling financial misconduct matters. He confirmed that misusing business funds as Daniel had could expose him to claims and potentially a formal review. The personal liability question was serious. I asked what all this meant practically. She said it meant their plan had one significant problem. It had been built entirely on the assumption that I would not look closely, that I would be too hurt or too trusting to follow a paper trail, that I would sign the documents placed in front of me. They had not planned for a woman who kept a notebook in her school bag. They had not planned for Saad. What do we do next? I asked. She looked at me steadily across the desk. We let them find out. The financial misrepresentation was confirmed in writing within 10 days. Saad filed a formal request for a complete accounting of the company's assets, including the property. Because I had co-signed the business loan, I had the legal right to request this. It was not dramatic. It was just paperwork moving through a system Daniel had never imagined I would use. The response confirmed everything. The property had been purchased using the business loan. It had been registered under the company name, but it had been occupied as a private residence from the date of purchase. No business activity had ever been conducted there. That meant the stated purpose of the loan was false. It also meant Daniel, as primary director, was personally liable. The business structure that should have protected him no longer applied. Saad also confirmed that Diane's signed declaration, the one meant to tidy the company's records, now worked against the arrangement it had been designed to protect. She had confirmed something provably untrue. It was part of the legal record. I did not feel triumph when Saad told me all of this. I felt something quieter. I felt the feeling of a person who has been told they were not imagining things. Everything I had found was real. Every hour I had spent at that kitchen table with a notebook had mattered. The ground under me was finally solid again. Daniel came home to find me sitting at the kitchen table with 3 folders in front of me. I had made tea. I set a cup on his side as well. I wanted to be the person in the room who was not afraid. He sat down slowly. He looked at the folders. He looked at my face. He said he had received a letter from a legal firm about the company property. He said he did not understand it. I told him I would explain. I went through each folder. Bank records with the withdrawals. Company credit card statements. Property registration documents. Diane's signed declaration. The insurance policy. Then I opened the 3rd folder and placed the draft will on the table between us. I watched him look at it. He said it was just a draft. He had not filed it. Things had been complicated. I said I knew it was a draft. I knew it was 4 months old. I knew he had been preparing it while we were still sharing a bed and a savings account and a life. He said he had never wanted to hurt me. I believed that. I think he had not wanted to hurt me. He had simply wanted everything. Both lives. Both families. The whole arrangement. He had just not wanted to do the honest work of being clear about it. I closed the folder. I told him Saad would be in touch with his lawyer. I found out later through Amara that Diane had not been told about the full legal exposure until Daniel called her the evening after I showed him the folders. She had believed everything was under control. The paperwork was tidy. I would eventually accept the situation. The inheritance plan would move forward the way she had designed it. When Daniel explained what had been filed and what it meant, she went very quiet. Then she asked about the document she had signed. He had to explain that the declaration she had signed confirming the property's business purpose was now part of the legal record. It had been submitted. It could not be recalled. Amara said the phone call did not go well after that. I do not take pleasure in other people's fear. But I want to be clear about this. Diane had sat across from me multiple times and poured tea, and told me her grandson was her real grandson. She had helped build a structure designed to remove me quietly from a life I had helped build. She had signed a document without reading it, trusting that her son's plan was solid. The inheritance she had arranged so carefully, the legacy she had been building for Marcus and Daniel, was now connected to a legal situation that could not simply be tidied away. Everything she had worked to protect was now uncertain. The plan had come undone in the details, the way dishonest plans usually do. The weeks that followed moved quickly, the way things do when paperwork starts making decisions. Daniel retained a lawyer. His lawyer reviewed everything Saad had submitted. I do not know what was said in those meetings. I know the result. Daniel agreed to full financial disclosure. The joint savings account was properly divided. The portion traceable to the other household was separated and addressed as part of the settlement. The property question took longer. Because the loan had been misrepresented, its status had to be reviewed. This created serious complications for the company and for Daniel personally as the director who had authorized the purchase. Diane withdrew from her role as named executor. The draft will was never filed. It disappeared from the conversation entirely. Priya moved out of the apartment within 2 months. That is her story, not mine. She had been given a particular version of events for years. She had her own damage to work through. Marcus was 4 years old and understood none of it. That was the only part that made me genuinely sad. He had not asked to be placed at the center of someone else's plan. He had not asked to be a reason or a piece on a board. He had simply wanted his father at the Christmas play and the sports day.
He had wanted ordinary things.
I understood that completely. I moved out of the apartment in January. I found a place closer to the school where I taught. Large windows. Morning light in the kitchen. I painted the walls soft white the first weekend I was there. There was no final speech. No confrontation. I had rehearsed. Daniel and I had already said what needed to be said, mostly through lawyers, mostly through documents, mostly through the slow, unglamorous process of untangling a shared life. The last time I saw him, we were signing papers. He looked tired. He looked like someone who had wanted something large and easy and had ended up with something complicated and costly. I signed my name clearly, without hesitation. I walked out to the car park and the air smelled like January and cold grass. I sat in my car for a few minutes, not crying, not thinking about him. I thought about my grandmother. She told me something when I was 17 that I had not understood until now. She said a woman should know what belongs to her. Not because of pride. Because the world will subtract you if you allow it. I had allowed it for a while. Then I had stopped. My name was on my new lease. My savings were in my account. My medical records were mine again. My future was a blank page no one else had written on. I started the car. I drove home. For the first time in a very long time, home was exactly where I was headed.